This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lorraine's, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
BTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. It is Monday, May 16th, and I'm really excited for today's show. It kind of came together towards the end of last week, with the announcement of the passing of Bass Angler Sportsman Society, B.A.S.S. Bassmaster founder and father Ray Scott. I think he was like 88. But Ray passed away, leaving an incredible legacy behind him, and a lot of people indebted for his vision in the late 1960s that he carried through all the way to his passing. But I was thinking, who could I get on the show to kind of put into perspective, how big I am on the history of the sport. I actually talked about that last week towards the end of the show, about how we have so many of these living legends who were there at the beginning, and in a sport that has gone so far since the late 1960s and that first 1971 Bassmaster Classic on Lake Mead through 2022. That we need to take advantage of the living history that we still have available, and those stories to kind of put into perspective kind of what is important now and why and how this sport that we all love and follow, sometimes irrationally, came to be. So one of the guys that I thought of who had a really good relationship with Ray, who knows the history of it, is 2020 Bass Fishing Hall of Fame inductee Steve Bowman, big instrumental in ESPN Outdoors, works a lot with the Elite Series, now been in the industry as a writer for newspapers back in the day. He's been around forever. He knows everything. And I called him, and he's like, well, yeah. First of all, I called him to see if he'd be on. He said, yeah, well, we need to get, someone else who's there from the beginning. And he said, well, what about Bobby Murray? And I said, two-time Bassmaster Classic champ Bobby Murray, who won the first Bassmaster Classic on Lake Mead and then won again on Ross Barnett. He said, yeah, that's who I'm talking about. So Steve got me in on a three-way call, and sure enough, Bobby Murray's going to come on to talk about Ray Scott, some of the early stories. I have no idea where we're going to go with this, but he is still sharp as a tack, and looking forward to that. And then we'll have Steve Bowman on in the second half of the show. Get to a little bit of news before we get to Mr. Murray, and we'll see if I can hit all the buttons properly here with the Steve will actually be on live via video, but the Sunline hotline is how we're going to talk to Bobby Murray. Said he's not that adept with a computer, which is completely understandable, but we got a couple guys who are absolutely on fire in the bass fishing world right now, most notably and recent winner of the MLF Pro Circuit on Gunnersville, which would be Nick LeBrun, went into the final day and came out with 22-15 to get the win. One of the good guys in the sport, and obviously since winning, I believe he won the All-American in like 2018. I think that was it. If my memory serves me right, I don't have it pulled up right now, but just looking at what Nick LeBrun has done over the past 6-7 months, obviously he won the Bassmaster Central Open to close out the 2021 season on Grand Lake, which put him into the Bassmaster Classic. So since March, he had a top 20 in the Bassmaster Classic on Hartwell. He finished 18th there. Then he finished 9th in the Pro Circuit on Pickwick. Then he almost won the last Bassmaster Open on Ross Barnett. He finished 2nd in that one. And he finished first here at Gunnersville in the pro circuit. So a heck of a run for Nick LeBrun, one of the nicest guys that I've come across, always very genuine, really good interview too. So I will get Mr. LeBrun on the show soon. Another guy that I'm going to get on soon is Ken Ma. We've had him on a couple times in the past, but the Wild West Apex Series, the Pro Tour, took place this past week out on the Columbia River in Arlington, Oregon, which is not known as a hotbed for tournament fishing, but, I've talked about that Apex Series in the past. I also need to get Nick Salvucci on. He just won one of those. But through the Wild West, they qualify. I think Littner's fishing some of that. I know Ish is fishing some of that. But the fourth Apex win in the past year for Ken Ma. He caught a 7-pound northern strain largemouth out of that. But really cool tournament out there. So Ken Ma also on fire. We'll get him on. I need to do a West Coast show. There's a couple guys on the West Coast that I know that I need to get on. Like I said, Salvucci, Ken Ma, and then on the other side, on the one bass, Billy Egan making the announcement that this year's U.S. Open is moving venues. We're going to have him on the first week of June due to the historic low water that we've talked about on Lake Mead. So the first time the U.S. Open will not be on Lake Mead. And then also have some Elite Series action, back in action after they had about a month off. It seems like they always go really hard, and then they have a month off, and then they go up north. But we are back on Lake Fork this weekend. I'm super excited to get to see the guys like Lee Livesey, Keith Combs, Chris Zaldain, Polinick, Jacobson. I'm interested to see how much the glide bait will play in this event. So they are all currently on the water as we speak right now, practicing for that event. So full slate of everything that went down this past weekend and a full slate moving forward. But like I said, the focus on today's show is kind of trying to put into perspective the legacy of Ray Scott, the founder of B.A.S.S, who passed away last week, and kind of what he meant. And I thought it would be good to try to get back to the beginning, some of those early days, talk to some of those guys who were on the plane for that first classic, who started fishing in the late 60s, early 70s. He had the All-American and then the Classics, and then the Tour came right there. And I've had some really interesting conversations with real veteran people in the industry who've been in it 30, 40, 50 plus years. And they all have a very interesting take on Ray, but they, not only from a personal, but just everyone that I've talked to that was there that knew him while this was going on has always been so amazed at the vision that he had for something that didn't exist. It's not like he took an existing platform and reinvented it and made it better. He actually took something that didn't exist, and he had this brainchild, and then obviously a lot of things happened at the right time with the cast of characters that came on in the early 70s, getting hooked up with Bob Cobb, creating rivalries between clubs, groups, bringing in the safety aspect, bringing in the conservation aspect to it. So a lot of things that Ray did that went right that we carry through and take for granted today all started with one guy and then a group of people around him that made things happen. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we will talk with Bobby Murray, two-time Bassmaster Classic champ, about some stories from Ray Scott from back in the day. This is BTL on a Monday. We'll be back after this.
The time for you to get Active Target Live Sonar is now. Get $200 cash back when you buy Active Target, or $400 back with Active Target and Elite FS9. And change the way you fish. Target fish with Active Target and let Elite FS handle the rest. Active Target is also compatible with HDS Live and HDS Carbon. Active Target by Lowrance.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Monday. It is now time to dial up two-time Bassmaster Classic champ, Bobby Murray. I'm going to have to plug these in again. I'm glad I wrote this down. I talked to him before, and I think I called the wrong number. I think I might have called Stephen Browning on accident. He'd be a good one to have on, too. He's having a heck of a year. All right. We are dialed up. Bobby Murray. I guess I should have asked him where he's actually based out of.
Hello.
Bobby Murray.
Yes.
You are live on BTL on a Monday with Matt. Dude, thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk a little bit about old school Bassmaster.
I cannot hear a word you're saying.
You can't hear what I'm saying. Hold on. Let me try something. One more second. You should be able to hear what I'm saying now, Mr. Murray.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for taking time, as I was saying, to jump on BTL to talk about the early days of Bassmaster and the legacy of one Ray Scott.
Yes, it was quite a time as we look back on it and see what a pioneer for the outdoor industry that Ray Scott was, and fishing is just a part of it. He helped the whole, especially the fishing industry. He almost spawned it himself.
All right, I want to go back to the beginning because everyone knows that you have won 2 Bassmaster Classics, but you know, Ray started this thing, was it 1967, I believe. Beaver Lake was the first invitational. Now, you did not fish in the very first one on Beaver Lake, right? You came around right around 1969, 1970.
Yes, the first one was held on Beaver Lake, and I believe it was in early '68, wasn't it? I don't know if it was. 69 or 68. I don't think it was 67, but now that was a long time ago. But Stan Sloan won the very first tournament that was held on Beaver Lake, and he intertwined with my career all the way through. That's Stan, and of course, you know, Ray had a dream. He wanted to take the sport of bass fishing and lift it up to where it competed with all the other sports, where we had national recognition, you know, and he brought together that first group of guys is very unique in how each person contributed to B.A.S., all the way from Bill Dance and Roland Martin, Don Butler, Rayo Breckenridge. There was a bunch of guys that just... Go ahead.
I said those are some names, Bobby.
Oh, yeah. You know, they're the legends of our industry. And I was just blessed that I was right in the middle of that bunch. And, you know, fishing and television spawned about that time when Dance came on. You know, probably the first person that really was a popular TV celebrity fishing was Virgil Ward. And his son and grandson fished B.A.S.S. And Billy Ward fished the Classic several times, and I think Greg did once or twice. But, you know, Ray brought the best of everybody out. He was trying to lift everything up, and he played no favorites. Everybody was his hero because he was trying to build B.A.S.S. And the better that everybody did, it just kept raising the sport to a different level. And then Ray had the uncanny ability to hire the right person for the job. You know, people like Harold Sharp
Mm-hmm.
that really ran the tournaments. Bob Cobb, when he hired Bob and from Tulsa, he brought him on, and Bassmaster magazine exploded. In the beginning, you didn't get a Bassmaster magazine every month. It came quarterly. And by the time we got the next magazine, we could recite the one before that, because we read it from cover to cover and paid attention to what people were catching them on. It was a learning experience
Mm-hmm.
for all of us. And we just had the unique opportunity to get in on the very front of it. And I feel blessed that I came along at the time that I did, because I was right out of college. I didn't graduate college till 1969.
Yeah.
And 3 months later, I fished my first B.A.S.S tournament, and the ball started rolling, and I hung on to it as long as I could.
I want to say outside I believe Stanley Mitchell's the youngest Classic winner, and then Brian Kirchhoff, the Federation Nation angler, and then you were only like 25 when you won your first Classic on Lake Mead, correct?
Yes, I was 26.
26 there. Now, do you remember the first time you met Ray? Obviously, you were into fishing, but do you remember what made you say, you know what? I believe that this is a upstanding organization, and I trust this guy with my money, and I trust the integrity of the competition, and I'm going to jump in this new thing called B.A.S.S.
Well, that happened in the summer of '69. I had one of my mentors was named Pee Wee Wadsworth. He was a guide on Washita, and kind of my idol as I was growing up, and I tried to pay real close attention. And he was the one that threw his arm around me and said, "Come on, let's go fish this thing over in Alabama, this tournament over there." And that was in June of '69, and that's where I met Ray. He was over there, and well, I was so impressed with it that the scope of the anglers, we had anglers all the way from the Carolinas to California that came in there and fished. And I think that the single biggest day's catch is still the record from that first event. I was just a young kid, a fishing guide on Toledo Bend. That's what I was doing after I graduated, because it was either that or go to Vietnam. And they didn't fish much in Nam at the time.
Yeah.
So when we went over there and fished that, one guy, what was his name? Rip Nunnery. I'm thinking back 60 years.
They're doing
now.
great. I'm impressed. They had heck of some names back then. Those are some great names.
The Rip came in. He flew into Alabama from California, didn't have a boat, was paired, and got paired with a guy named Gerald Blanchard. And Rip, the first day of the tournament, Rip weighed in 98.13.
15 fish.
That's 15 bass that averaged over 6.5 pounds.
Wow.
And Gerald, his partner, had 85 pounds and didn't have a limit. And I was fortunate enough that my little fishing hole was about 250 yards from where they were, and I saw them catch every one of those giants. I think I had like 22 pounds the first day, but that left such an impression on me that you can find these fish in schools like that. And we were blessed that, when I was coming out of school at that time, that's when all the reservoirs in this country were built. Toledo Bend, Sam Rayburn, Millwood, just all through the South. There was new lakes being built, so they were all loaded with fish, and you could really put together some strings of fish. Now every fish in the lake has a PhD.
Yeah. Bobby, what do you think it was? You mentioned anglers flying in. You mentioned you were a guide fresh out of college. You had all these guys from all over the country. What do you think it was about Ray and the Bass organization that made all these people trust him to come this far for a fishing tournament?
Well, you know, Ray was probably one of the best salesmen that you have ever met. He could sell ice cream to Eskimos. And he had such a dynamic personality. He could, you know, when we'd have our pre-tournament meetings and he'd go over everything, everybody felt like that he was talking just to him personally, and he played no favorites. He wanted everybody to do good because that lifted B.A.S.S. up. And, you know, along with all of that stuff, I mean, he had the ability to hire the right people. He hired Bob Cobb to transform Bassmaster magazine. I mean, just had that knack of writing. And Homer Circle wrote articles in it, who was in the first class of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. And I guess the stars just lined up, because in that first group, it was me and Dance and Roland and Jerry McInnes and Hank Parker and the anglers.
Johnny Morris? Was Johnny Morris in that too?
Absolutely. Johnny was there. Jimmy Houston was there. If you look back at all the legends of fishing over the last 50 or 60 years, you'll be astonished by how many of them were in that first group that went into that really supported B.A.S.S. because that was not the only fishing organization out there. Now there were other organizations, but they didn't. Ray lifted B.A.S.S. above that, because there was always somebody trying to add a fish out of a fish box, you know, and fishing rodeos, you know, that was just the cheat fest. But Ray lifted our sport above all the rest of the fishing tournaments that were out there, and you knew that everybody was going to get the same shake, so you had nothing to complain about. And that's where, you know, everybody from Billy Ward to McInnes, Larry Nixon, myself, you know, Roland Dance, there's all the kind of the legends of today started right there in 69, 68, 69, 70. You know, when Stan Sloan won that first tournament up on Beaver Lake, by the way, he won it on a bomber spin stick, which is a little topwater bait, looks like a devil's horse. That's what he won it on. But he and I kind of hit it off at the first tournaments, and you know, Stan made the bait that I won the first classic on.
Spinner bait, right?
He made that Zorro spinner bait, Zorro aggravator, and I won the first classic on it, and Stan and I become more than friends. We were soulmates there for 15, 20 years before he passed away. And it's kind of scary on mine. I know that I'm in the ninth inning because a lot of my buddies are going through health issues right now. I'm blessed. My health is still pretty good, but if I had to look back and do it all over again, there's not one thing I would change, because I've made my living all of my life doing what most people do for fun. Yeah. And I'm truly blessed.
Bobby, you know, the good thing about that analogy is sometimes baseball games go 17, 18 innings long. So well, yeah, you still got time. Hey,
I'm going fishing today.
Where are you headed?
I'm going up to Ouachita. The fish are biting topwater. We're catching them on Zara spooks up there right now, and it's pretty shiny when you can catch them on top.
Oh heck yeah, yeah! I've heard about it all the time. You don't happen to throw a Carolina rig still, do you?
Oh, we fish everything. I mean, you know, with all the innovations of electronics and stuff that we have now, you don't fish anymore where there's no fish. You know, back in 69, I had a little green. You couldn't buy a depth finder in Arkansas. There was not one. I had to go to Little Rock to J.C. Penney's, and I ordered this little green box from Tulsa that had little lantern batteries in it, and a suction cup you put on the back, but it showed you your depth. That was the first fish locator. And where that has grown through the last 50 to 60 years
Crazy.
is now we've got down scan, side scan, pan optics. You don't fish anymore. The real anglers do not fish anymore looking for fish with a fish bait. You look for them with your electronics.
Yeah.
And the catch ratio goes up. The length of cast comes out. There's a whole different system of fishing now than when I started, because we were just trying to beat the water to a foam with everything in shallow water and see how many bites we could get. And that is not how it's done today.
We're talking with two-time Classic champ Bobby Murray, talking about some of the early days of bass, some Ray Scott stories, and I would be remiss. I've got you on the line here, Bobby. I've watched the Bassmaster Legend and Lores. I've watched the replay of that 1971 Bassmaster Classic. It's kind of in the annals of history about the plane flight with those 1971 Bassmaster Classic competitors getting in the plane. Ray Scott opening an envelope and saying you guys are going to Lake Mead. You were there. Do you vividly remember that moment like it was yesterday where you guys all got on the plane and the palpable excitement that existed? Just kind of walk me through that, what that experience was like, finding out where the first Classic would ever be.
Well, first of all, there was 24 anglers that qualified for the first Bassmaster Classic, and Ray had everybody to fly to Atlanta, because we thought, B.A.S.S. was kind of Arkansas, Alabama, northern Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, and we were all trying to guess the lake. And and another thing that most people don't realize is that we were only allowed to take 10 pounds of tackle. You couldn't take a truckload of everything you owned. So we had a tackle box and had 10 pounds of tackle. And when we got to Atlanta, the day before we flew out, we had a banquet, and Ray did the weigh-in on the tackle boxes. He sent everybody the tackle box, so he knew what it weighed. And then he'd take that tackle box and put it on the scale. If it weighed over 10 pounds, him and Harold would open the tackle box up, and they would start picking out lures that they wanted out of it till it got below 10 pounds.
And they kept
There was Big O's, original hand-carved Big O's coming out of that thing. I mean, Ray and Harold got healed right there. And then the next morning, we all got up, got on an airplane, and I thought we were going to Santee Cooper. I thought we were going to South Carolina. And, of course, I had my little tackle box with my worms and topwaters and spinner baits and everything in it. And when the plane took off and when it got to 10,000 feet, he had an envelope, and he stood up and asked anybody know where we're going? And everybody's, everything was from Santee Cooper to Kentucky Lake, Ross Barnett, Sam Rayburn. But he opened up the envelope and he said, "We're going to Las Vegas," and everybody went nuts. Not one person on that airplane had ever fished Lake Mead. So it was a true test. Nobody had ever been on the water. And when we got there, the water's clearer than the air in Arkansas and about 350 feet deep. Is one of the deepest, clearest reservoirs in the country. And literally, we all struggled a little bit there. It was just so foreign to us to fish that. And Tom Mann figured it out better than anybody else. Tom caught more fish than anybody, but he was catching little fish. I wasn't catching just barely half of what he was, but my fish were bigger. And I caught half of the numbers of fish that Tom weighed in and won by a pound. And it changed my life, and it changed B.A.S.S. forever, because once we went to Las Vegas, Ray was a salesman. He put all this together. The Dunes Hotel with Abe Schiller, who was one of the head PR people for all the hotels in Dallas, had a sports writer in every boat, so everything got covered. And from that day forward, B.A.S.S. was in a whole different league than anybody else, because it was the major league of bass fishing. And I know there's other ones today, there was back then, but B.A.S.S., it's, if you want to compete in fishing and fish against the best, you had to go in and fish Ray's tournaments, because he just put on the best events there was.
Were there dust-ups back in the day, Bobby? Like, was Ray the guy who settled it? Like, this guy came in and blah, 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 and Ray would settle that all out? I know you said that one of the biggest things was he was fair with everyone and treated everyone equal. Was that part of his job, too, to settle the disputes?
He didn't settle anything. He said what he said was how it was. We didn't have a lot of big disputes or anything. There were some little bitty minor things, logistic things that happened, but most of these guys here knew what we were doing, and there were some really great anglers in that bunch. Of course, they're all the legends of fishing today, but Ray just made everybody feel comfortable and knowing that everybody was going to get the same shake in the deal.
That's great.
And that's how it, from that classic on, everything just got bigger and better, and the money started. The first B.A.S.S. tournament, the classic that I won, it was paid $10,000. Now, $10,000 doesn't sound like a whole bunch today, but in 1971, let me tell you, it was a lot of money.
Heck yeah! And then when you won your second one, it was you were right over $25,000. 6-7 years later, there on Ross Barnett.
Yes. So but it all revolved off of that first event. Everybody knew that every angler in the country wanted to fish the Bassmasters Classic. From that period on, every tournament was full. Just have a 300-man field is all you're going to have to qualify in a tournament. And all the outdoor riders came on after that Las Vegas deal. It was just something about it that made everything rise up to the next level. And Ray just kept building on it and building on it, building it. He's responsible for my livelihood since I was in my 20s. I'm almost 80 now. But Bill Dance, Roland Martin, Jimmy Houston, all of the anglers that were back in my day owe a debt of gratitude. And everybody that's fishing their first tournament tomorrow or this year owe Ray a great deal of gratitude, because he was the guy that had the dream, and he just pulled all of us along with him and made all of our careers happen.
That's fantastic. One more question then. What part of the lake were you in there on Lake Mead? Were you in the gypsum beds, Colville Bay, the Narrows? Did you make a run to Overton?
On Lake Mead?
Yeah, that first win with the spinnerbait in 2 foot of water.
My little pattern was, I fished. First of all, the boats that we used were furnished by Rebel at the time. They were inboard outboards. They were Rebel boats is what they were. And they got caught, half of them got caught in a snowstorm in Flagstaff, Arizona, coming to Lake Mead. So the practice day, we had to practice with another competitor. I drew Drew Reese, was from Missouri. And Drew and I fished all day, the practice day, and never got a bite.
Really?
We never got bit. And we were fishing humps and long points and bumps, and there's no cover unless in the very back end of a little deep gut you might find a couple of tumbleweeds or something. But my pattern was I was fishing shade. Anywhere I could find shade on the shoreline. And now I wasn't catching a lot of fish, but that was the only place I could get a bite. And I ran through the canyon, going in every little deep gut that I could find. You know, as the sun come up in the morning, I'd try to fish the east side of the canyon. And in the afternoon, I'd try to fish the west side walls. Now I'm fishing, boats setting in 40 to 60 foot. And I'm just paralleling these deep walls back in these canyons that had shade on it. And every once in a while, I'd catch about a 3.5 pounder. And I caught 5 a day. It's when the limit was 10. Tom caught 10 every day. I caught 5 every day. But mine were just my 15 outweighed his 30 by about 1.5 pounds or something like that.
So you won the Classic with 15 fish, even though the limit was 30.
That's right.
I did not realize that. So you basically, in today's, that'd be like winning the Classic with 8 fish.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know. Yeah. I did not know that, Bobby.
It was just, but you know, my fish were single fish that were just, I mean, back in these guts. And like I said, I'd catch 5 a day, and Tom was catching, he was weighing in 10 a day. He was fishing in Las Vegas Wash and a bunch of saltwater cedar trees way back in the back of Vegas Wash. And he was throwing a worm, one of those little jelly worms, 6-inch jelly worm. And I was throwing that little 1/4 ounce Zorro aggravator. And it just so happened that, you know, my fish were a little more than twice the size of what Tom was catching. But it was unique that nobody had ever been there. It was a true test, and the Lord was with me, and I happened to win it, and it just changed my life literally forever.
Awesome. Talking with Bobby Murray here. Bobby, I know you have some topwater fish to catch on Ouachita, so I don't want to keep you too long. I do want to ask you one more thing. We talk about all of the kind of rules and things that Ray and Bass installed, from a lot of safety things, you know, that don't kill your catch, which then turn into catch and release, the live wells in the boats, the kill switches, life jackets, safety things. But at the beginning, and this is something that I've never been a part of, getting involved in tournament fishing in the late 90s, was the shotgun start. And I think that is an iconic video of, well, now the inboard outboard Rebels, I didn't know they were Rebels, taking off there on Lake Mead at the start. What do you remember about the shotgun starts? That had to be awesome to be a part of.
Well, it was a sight to see. There's no doubt about that. But as the tournaments go on, you know, we had 3 flights back then. If you're fishing a regular tournament, you had 3 flights. You're in the first flight, second flight, or third flight. They went out about 10 minutes apart and came in about 10 minutes apart. But that all came crashing down. I can't remember which tournament it was, but Ray would always be out front with his bullhorn, you know, and then would fire the flare gun off. But I don't know if it was at Kentucky Lake or Ross Barnett, but one of them, he almost got ran over out there because a boat veered and another boat veered, and then Ray is sitting, you know, he's sitting right out in front of that line of boats taking off. It looks like a cavalry charge coming at him.
It's nuts.
Now, back then, an 80 horsepower was a big motor when we started. You know, there wasn't a lot of 200s and stuff like that. But once he almost got hit out there on a start, then we started filing out and not having that gun start. But in a few tournaments, I mean, that start was a rodeo now.
Yeah, it looked crazy.
Oh, if somebody just veered a little bit, it's just a chain reaction because we're literally lined up gunnel to gunnel going across there. So we learned, I mean, Ray massaged it as we went along. My brother was the one person that is responsible for you can never put more than your limit. You cannot ever have more than your limit in your boat at one time. That rule came about after the tournament that was in, it was in 69. It was in November of 69 on Toledo Bend. And my brother, you know, the limit was 15 and you got to keep 15. But somehow Billy had more than that in his live well. He just threw them up on the dock, picked 15 out, and went in. And Ray looked at that and said, "No, we can't do that." So the rule came in then that you can only have your limit in the boat. And as we went along, there was other little things that happened that he massaged everything, but it was always for the betterment of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as you can see, it's as strong today as it's ever been.
Heck yeah. Well, Bobby, I greatly appreciate the time that you've taken to tell some of the stories of the past, kind of put some of the early years of Ray Scott into perspective. And, you know, right along with Ray, you are one of the legends in the sport, and it's been an honor to have you on Bass Talk Live today. And I hope that you get a lot of vicious topwater blow-ups today when you head out to the pond.
Well, thanks a ton, and I appreciate it. And we have lost a true champion in Ray Scott. He everybody that likes to fish, he has helped your sport more than you will ever know.
Thanks, Bobby. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Catch a big one. Bye.
All right, same to you. All right, that was Bobby Murray. Dude, I could have him on the show for about 3 hours. All right, when we come back, we'll go to another Bass Fishing Hall of Famer, 2020 class, Steve Bowman, who is he was not at the first Bassmaster Classic or the 1967-68 tournament there on Beaver Lake, but he has been there for a lot of monumental moments in bass, and he's going to kind of try to put into perspective the later years of Ray Scott with bass, kind of what Ray did behind the scenes with the anglers, with the organization that has allowed it to be so strong today. So it is BTL on a Monday. We'll be back right after this.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, It's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Monday, May 16th. That was a freaking cool interview. I would like to have Bobby back on and just talk about some old school stuff. I don't know why that gets me going so much, Bill. I was genuinely, like I saw something incident, genuinely smiling and stuff, and he sharp as a tack and talking about all the guys. I mean, Dick, you can still go to the Bassmaster Classic, walk around and see Bobby and Jimmy, Hank, Roland, Rick. Well, Rick's still fishing in all the things. It's just cool to see that that group of guys still just as passionate about the sport as they were 40, 50 years ago. All right, let's head to another Bass Fishing Hall of Fame inductee in 2020. That is Mr. I can't say Mr. Everybody says, I'm not Mr. I'm just Steve to you, but it is Mr. Steve Bowman. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good, Mr. Pangrack. How are you doing?
I'm good. You've probably gotten to hear hours and hours, and I know you have. I know there's some material on Bassmaster.com of Bobby Murray talking about some of the early days. There's a great tribute that went out with some of the legends of the sport talking about Ray Scott. But, dude, you've probably, poured a little bit of brown liquid in your day, sat back and listened to Bobby just tell stories from those late 60s, early 70s with a smile on your face.
Yes, I'm not a brown liquid guy, but and we still fish together once or twice a year, and spend the day driving to where we're getting and on the water, and he'll actually come and hang out with me tomorrow at my studio for a little while at the Bassmaster Studio, and he's just such a joy to be around. You know what? I've been a very blessed man. I was a punk kid when I started this. As a matter of fact, I was thinking while I was listening to some of Bobby is that I was the youngest outdoor rider for 15 years at the Classic. I mean, I was just the punk kid that came along, and a lot of these guys took me under their wings, and Ricky Green and Bobby Murray and George Cochran, Larry, they took me under their wing, and I just really got to spend a lot of time with them. I mean, they'd call up and say, hey, Bobby really liked to throw a canoe in the back of his truck, and he called it blue lining, and he said, let's go up in the mountains and get on these little old streams and throw a little old grub or a little old twister tail or a tube and catch smallmouth, So we did that. We did that kind of thing all the time. So I got to hear a lot of the old stories, and it was great. It was fantastic. Bobby is a great guy. Treasure.
Was your first kind of foray into the world of Ray Scott and bass when you were the editor for the Arkansas Democrat?
That's it. Yes. My first introduction to Ray was at the, I think it was when I was a college student, he was 84 at the Arkansas River at Pine Bluff, and then as a media member, 87, and James River in Virginia. I mean, he was just such a showman. He was he was bigger than life, to be honest with you. And everybody loved him. I mean, I've been talking to there are people who didn't see eye to eye with Ray. There are people who didn't like certain things about Ray. There are people who would shake their head at Ray, but every one of them loved Ray. You know, it was Ray got things done, and I noticed Bobby Murray said that. I mean, he got things done, and he was never content. He was always willing to do a little bit of tweaking here and tweaking there, and he was just, you know, he was never content. He wanted some perfection that, you know, we never achieve, and he'd fight for it, and that's what people recognized that in him, and they loved the fact that he would do that. You know, he kind of honed this sport out of granite rock. You know, it's hard even today. Tournament anglers, you know, it's gotten better, but I mean, you know, you're talking about guys that are, you know, they're self-employed, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, they live out. They don't live in the business sector. They don't live in the social sector. They don't live, and you know, and he brought all those guys together and made, you know, some of these just good old country boys, good old American icons, right? And we all love Ray for that. So,
I think it's very interesting, and you've been very influential in the .com, ESPN Outdoors .com, driving a lot of the content that's going on the website now. It's where almost all of the media is digested. But in those, they're not even early days, but like the 80s, the 90s, the pre-internet days, I've heard stories of how important the media, specifically at the Bassmaster Classic, was to Ray, and bringing them in and letting media members get in the boat with Classic competitors, having tournaments for media members the day before the Bassmaster Classic went off. And I think something that's overlooked is he understood the importance of the written word and bringing outdoor writers and editors and newspapers and magazines in, covering their expenses out of Bass's pocket for promotion and distributing, to make this crazy, weird thing seem normal and create the superheroes that we all know and love today. And you were kind of right in the middle of that too, as a member of the media.
Right. And you know, and Ray recognized that recognized the power of that immediately with Bob Cobb, who wrote for the Tulsa newspaper. And then he hired Bob Cobb. And but it was Bob Cobb who really, that can't go understated. Bob Cobb was the guy that made every media person feel special, and Ray was the show. You know, I mean, he was the guy that was worth coming to write about, right? So, but Ray would do that as well. But I mean, you know, Ray wasn't afraid to hurt your feelings either. You know, so I mean, and not doing it intentionally. I mean, he was just that guy. He was that jokester. He was that guy. And so Bob Cobb really kind of helped tie all that together and really did a lot of that. But I mean, Ray had to pay the bill, right? And you're right. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be in this industry. I'm certain. I mean, I was a young outdoor writer for a newspaper in the middle of a newspaper war, the last great newspaper war in Arkansas. And the guy that I was competing against was actually on the airplane to Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah. And, or the next airplane, maybe not the Vegas one, but the next airplane. And that's how old he was. And I was fighting for my life. I had to beg to be part of the media team or the media at that '87 Classic, and but I went and I saw Ray do his magic on the stage, and I saw the crowds were unbelievable at the James River, and you had the A team on one side and the B team on the other, and it, you know, it was such a close. All those events were so close and so exciting that I was like, I wasn't making any money. I was doomed to not ever make any money writing for a newspaper, but I was like, I'll do this for as long as I can, just to be able to come back here once a year, and it was like that. I mean, we paid our airfare to wherever. It was a lot of fun back in those days because, you know, we had 35, 40, 45 anglers in the Classic, and you know, they'd have their wives, and we would just load up on buses every night and go somewhere to eat together. And it was all pre-planned, obviously, but it was a very close-knit deal. Ray made that fun. I can remember one of my most endearing members of Ray and Helen Severe is we had like I said, he always made things fun. We had a carnival night at Classic. It was in Birmingham. And, you know, it was hot dogs and whatever, and cold beer and what, you know, and then they'd have these little games set up. You know, you throw a baseball and knock down bottles, or, you know, bago, or you know, might even had a little casting deal in there. Well, then you'd win a prize. Well, I don't know if Ray did it intentionally or somebody. Anyway, the prize, the average prize was a water gun, which broke out into this huge water gun fight in, you know, the lobby of the Birmingham Jefferson Convention Center. And I could still see Ray and Helen Severe hiding behind a couch with water pistols in each hand, and jumping up and squirting people, and then jumping back down like a real gunfight, you know, and then sliding back down. And I mean, you're sitting there, and I was young even then. I mean, it was early '90s, and I was like, man, these folks have a lot of fun, you know. And Ray was that guy. He brought it. It was fun for the anglers, you know. It wasn't like, hey, you're going to come fish this Classic, and you're going to do what I want you to do, and you're going to, you know, you're going to whip you in line. You're going to go talk to these anglers, and I mean, he made it all fun. He made it seem like a lot of fun to have media day, to put a media writer in your boat and take him out while you're practicing and let him catch a few fish for a tournament. You know, he made it all good for him. So.
You mentioned the fun and talk about it, but kind of when I called and asked you to come on the show and talk about it, one of the things that you brought up, and I actually made a note about it in my phone at the time that seemed really smart, was the competition, the manliness, I guess, that you said of I can catch a bigger fish than you. I mean, there's been studies that go all the way back to, you know, caveman days of the hunter gatherer going out and getting it. And you said one of the things that Ray and the early group, I'm sure Bob Cobb was involved in that. He was the editor of the Tulsa Tribune when he started there in the late 60s, and the Tulsa Club was one of the, if not the biggest bass club at the time, was that Ray really promoted the competition amongst bass clubs. And I mean, still now we have the 6-man in Oklahoma where you take your top 6, and then but when I grew up in Illinois in the 90s, that was the big deal. You wanted to make your team so you could go to the state and compete against the other teams, but it was fishing. And we look at it now as competition, but at the time he was kind of the one that really developed that bass club camaraderie. We're better than the other club, that really drove innovation, money, time, the whole thing. Well, right?
You mentioned a couple of things there that all come together. One, Bob Cobb, the Tulsa Trib, and the idea of 2 men one being better known as a fisherman or whatever. So I mean, you know, that's from the beginning of time. You go look at the earliest Bassmaster magazine for the caveman was on the cave wall. you know, those guys sitting on the cave wall with their fish in their hand and the stick figures or whatever. So that was very important. So Ray understood the human psyche very well. And I can remember hearing the stories of him going to Tulsa and the Tulsa Bass Club and saying, you know, hey, I was over in Memphis and those guys said they're going to come over here and kick your butt, you know, and but they're better fishermen in Tennessee than there are anywhere in Oklahoma. And then he would leave straight from there and go to Memphis and say, I just got back from Tulsa, and those guys said, those boys from Tennessee better not come over here. They said, we will bury them. You know, we're 100 times better fishermen in Oklahoma than there are in Tennessee. And the next thing you know, it was on. I mean, that's how he made that first tournament work. It wasn't that, hey, I'm going to put on this tournament that's going to someday be the precursor for all the professional bass fishing events out there. It was, I'm going to make him mad at him, and I'm going to bring them together in a cage match on Beaver Lake. And he was just, he had an uncanny ability to understand how to motivate people to do that. And it made it fun, because once those guys realized that and saw that, they really enjoyed telling the stories and realized that Ray had set them up is a harsh way of putting it, or playing them. But I mean, really, he did. He
got them riled up.
And he was great at that. I mean, that's the salesman. That is a salesman, you know. So.
This is right around the time, and you were right in the middle of this when it all went down. So I just would kind of get a timeline here, because this is kind of a little bit muddy in my brain. But Ray was the primary owner of Bass, and he'd had Helen Sevier on since the 70s, worked closely with him. But it was, you know, she's the one who's kind of came up with the TV show, the Bassmasters, in the mid 1980s, the music, the jump Larry Nixon with the one hand, fish coming out of the lily pads, all that, along with the narration of Bob Cobb and the direction. I say that to say it was also around that time, the mid 80s, I believe it was 1986, 87, that Ray started tossing the idea around of selling bass. Correct, but still maintaining his involvement in it. Like, when did it go from him running the entire show to then just kind of being a part of it? Because that's kind of my generation, that 90s stuff where Ray's still around, he's still doing the weigh-ins and stuff, but he's not the owner anymore.
Right. Well, you got to understand that, you know, Helen was an employee of Bass. They brought her on. She was a direct marketing guru.
Okay.
But at that point in time was basically, you used to get these things in the mail, you know, sign up now, get this, you know.
I still get those in the mail, Steve, and I'm
a
life member.
That was how they did it. There wasn't the TV commercials.
Yep.
You didn't get the spam in your email or whatever. It was boom. And she turned Bassmaster into this, with the magazine, into this huge business. I mean, like not overnight, but I mean, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she did that, and she had, you know, Ray's, I guess he's going to be in his 60s, early 60s. And he's going to be like, you know, maybe it's time for me to step away. And then he also saw the opportunity for him to make some money. But then I think if you read anything about Ray, if you know anything about Ray recognized that he could sell this, make some money, step away from the day-to-day, but still be the face of Bass. And he really felt like that he would be the face of that for forever. And in some ways he has and will be. But he, you know, it's kind of like I can have my cake and eat it too. That was Ray. Ray. Anybody that knows Ray knows that Ray liked to have his cake and eat it too. And I mean, there was companies back in the day, just as an example, and this isn't a slight on Ray. This is Ray. They did a story on the Big O in the Bassmaster magazine. You know, the original Big O, and
Fred Young, hand carved.
Picked up Big O number 403. Now there's some trivia. Not a lot of people know, but 403 Big O, and made a mold out of it and started making them out of composite plastic, right? And then they did a story on it in Bassmaster magazine, and it went bazonkers. Everybody wanted the Big O, whether it was wood or plastic, they wanted it. And Ray calls up Bill Goodwin, who he knew, and he was half serious and half funny, but he wanted a cut. And he was like, "We printed this, so you're gonna, I want my cut off every lure y'all sold, And of course, they just laughed at him, but there was some seriousness to that. So Ray liked to have opportunities to make money. I mean, he would do that. He would give an outdoor writer a book, his Bass Boss book, and then sign it and everything else, and hand it to him and said, "Oh yeah, that'd be $10." Just to say, like, Ray, you're wanting me to write about your book, and you're making me pay for it, But I mean, that was Ray, and everybody loved Ray because of that. I mean, because you can say, "I'm not buying your book," but he was just going to see if you're going to give him $10. He's going to see if he's going to give you. You're going to give him a cut off sales of a lure. He's going to see if he can stay at top of bass, get paid by the new owner, and not have to work 365 and still be ahead of it all.
Interesting. So, how kind of more recently, he passed away last week. I know he'd had some health issues. You kind of hear things through, but then that he's I mean, how recently would you say he was following the day-to-day stuff? I mean, was he still interested in it in the 2010s and on and stuff, or had he kind of moved on from it at that point?
Well, yeah, I mean, Helen sold it in 2000 to ESPN. And at that moment, Ray's impact was slowly, being pushed away, because that's a different entity, right? ESPN, I hate to say it out loud, but I mean, they don't necessarily eat their young, but they eat their old, and because they want to stay young, right? And so they kind of started pushing him out the door, there, and then, it's changed hands, and you can't be. Here's the thing that most people don't realize and refuse to even acknowledge. ESPN lost a ton of money on bass. We're talking 10 years of ownership, an average of about $13 million a year. Now, a lot of people say that out loud, and I'll probably get fired because of it. This is not a money-making venture. Tournaments aren't Helen Sevier and Ray Scott were the last tournament owners to make any money on a tournament. And you can ask if Irwin Jacobs would tell you the same thing. Boyd Duckett would tell you the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. There's no money in this, but we still do it. And the reason we do it is because of the ego. And that's a long story to get around to the point that when you have egos that own this stuff, eventually they want the ego of Ray Scott or the ego of Jerry McInnes or the ego of whoever is like, it's ego. So ego moves things around, and that's as honest as I can be. ESPN had a huge ego. Um, and it just kept going from there because you're losing money. And so even though you want to listen to the only guy that made any money at it, not at the expense of your ego. Your wallet's already hurting, so your psyche can't handle anymore. But so I know that's a roundabout way of saying that's kind of how Ray slowly started, and he was deteriorating some for some time. I mean, I'm deteriorating, and I'm not even I'm 59 years old, and I feel like I'm 79. But I'm deteriorating as well. So are you, Matt Panger, right?
Oh no, I feel it every morning.
No, oh yeah, I was rubbing biofreeze on my back and shoulders a while ago during y'all's commercial break.
You notice that's why I stretched my legs out. Now I have a little stool here. I got tired of my knees bending. I'd get up after the show and go, oh. But I'm good. So if you're okay, let's wrap it up with this, Steve, unless there's anything else you want to get in. But let's say you're a college angler, a high school angler, a junior angler. You look at what's going on now with the explosion of the younger anglers. And I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying it's anything, but it seems to me like even whether it's U.S. history or whatever, the history is becoming less important, and it's what's right now, what's happening right now with the social media. If you could instill something about Ray, about the beginning of the sport, that everybody coming up in the sport now who doesn't know who Ray Scott is other than a picture of a cowboy hat and the tassels, and he had something to do with bass. What is it that you want all these new generations of anglers to know about Ray to take with them throughout their journey in bass fishing, wherever that might lead them?
Okay. Well, and you're talking about tournament anglers, but I'm
anglers at all.
I'm going to broaden that base to every bass angler. If you love the idea of catching a bass, and it doesn't matter how old you are, if there's a tournament for you or if there's not a tournament for you, it doesn't matter. You owe a debt to Ray Scott. And the reason you owe a debt to Ray Scott is not because he decided to make some money off a tournament game, but because Ray put his passions and his belief in the things to make a sport that helped change the course of better equipment, better fishing line, better rods and reels, whether you fished a tournament or not, safer boats, safer life vests, safer everything, cleaner water. The thing that I like most about Ray is that he could walk in here and we'd be joking around, and he'd trying to figure out how to get $5 out of my pocket. But I knew when he left here that he was going to make sure that everything was right. Now, if you Bobby Murray was telling you, hey, Ray made sure everything was done, and that kind of thing happened. I mean, we have catch and release now in tournaments where back then they would throw them in a flat bottom, and at the end of the day, guys be out there hacking and sawing and slicing and dicing and releasing fish, releasing them in the grease, so to speak. And he wanted to change that. And the first tournament that he ever did that was at Ross Barnett in Mississippi. And the head guy at the Mississippi Game and Fish, Avery Wood, did not want him to release those fish back into Ross Barnett. And it wasn't that he wanted to eat them. He just thought that, okay, once these fish have been caught and they've been handled and everything else, you're going to put diseases back in the water. And Ray Scott wanted to build this catch and release mentality so much in bass fishing, felt like it was the savior to all of us rednecks going out there and just catching this and eating everything, to build in this catch and release thing, that he was willing to fight Avery Wood. Now, Avery Wood was a big man, not just in stature, but a big man, in the world. And they weren't going to let Ray put his fish back in the water. And Ray and Bob Cobb stood on the lakeside with baseball bats, if you can imagine that, as this group of Mississippi lawmakers came down and said, we're not going to let you put those fish back in. And Ray sitting there with a baseball bat, bumping it against his hand, over his shoulder. We're putting these fish back in the water. And that's how tough it was to scratch something in the stone that we take for granted today. And Ray was so adamant about some of these things that, I mean, in one day he filed 270 something lawsuits in the state of Alabama for clean water alone. Wow. I mean, that's a record. 270 something lawsuits. He was willing to go to the mat for his anglers. He was willing to go to the mat for the fish. He was willing to go to the mat for this sport. He was willing to go to the mat for whatever it took to have better fishing in this country. Not just better tournaments, but that was obviously a part of it. But not just better tournaments, better fishing. That guy was amazing. We can't get guys in your home state, whoever you're listening to now, if something happens, oh, well, they're killing grass over here. You know, I don't know what they're doing. You know, standing up. He showed us all how to do that. Showed us how to run a tournament. He showed us how to be honest and straightforward. He showed us how to stand up and be the men we think we are and stop the injustices of the world, and so we could have something better. I mean, he's not just an icon. He's an amazing founder of a lot of things that we can't even put our fingers on. So don't forget Ray Scott. You can't. If you're a young kid, you can't forget that. You need to know that he was George Washington crossing, you know, at the bow of the boat, and he was, you know, whoever in the leading the charge, and yeah, he reaped the rewards and the benefits, is what most anglers like to center their thoughts on. Yeah, well, he made a lot of money. Well, by golly, a man that worked that hard, did those great things, he ought to be able to have some comfort with making a little money. I hope that I would, you know. So that would be my one thing for the young crew. Don't forget that these people came before you.
That's good stuff. A lot of kind of tributes, photos, videos, things available over at Bassmaster.com. I know that you're probably working on some things that are coming down the pipe. Anything you want to let the listeners be on the lookout for if they want to get some more perspective from some of the guys telling Ray Scott stories, that they can go to Bassmaster.com in the near future and watch, listen to, look at.
Well, there'll be some stuff. Actually, we've got George Cochran, Larry Nixon, and Bobby Murray in the Bassmaster studio tomorrow to talk about this very thing. And later this week, we'll have our Elite Series at Lake Fork, and there's going to be some things around Ray there, and whether on site, on the live show, on the Fox Sports stuff, and so. We don't want to, me personally, I'm all of a sudden, I was thinking when we were first talking, I was the young punk, and now I'm the old guy, and I'm not going to let people forget Ray Scott. I'm not going to let people forget Bobby Murray. We don't understand how much easier we have it now because of guys like that, and especially Ray Scott. So.
I have one more request, Steve. I know you're influential in pool. At some point, we got to get 24 guys up in an airplane, mix maybe some old, some new. Maybe we do the Legends deal. We got to have an envelope. It's got to be, whether it's on Fox Sports, whether it's on the .com or something. There's got to be a Ray Scott memorial deal where these guys don't know what's going on. You can get all their stuff there. You can get, heck, how many of the Dirty Dozen are left? We can get them to take their boats. We get the 24. We put them to it. No one knows, and we somehow recreate that 71. And who knows where you take them to? You obviously can't take them to Lake Mead right now. They're finding bodies in barrels, and they can't have tournaments on it because of the water level. But man, I know it's been talked about before. I know that would be ideal. But man, that would be so cool.
I agree. Let's do that, and I think that would be fantastic. A really cool thing. And part of the reason is that would be a great tribute to Ray. And a lot of people don't know it was Ray's idea. he was so creative in so many ways. He literally, a couple of those tournaments, put Forrest Wood in jail, so Forrest Wood couldn't figure out where his boats were going.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, he did. Okay, he did what? So Forrest Wood created a Ranger boats. He had the partnership with Ranger, so they used the Rangers in the Bassmaster Classic. Everyone would show up. Every boat would be identical.
After that, they were Rangers up for a long, long time. And then when Forrest Wood would make the Classic, he brought Forrest Wood for some reason down to Memphis and had him arrested and put in jail until the boats left the flipping factory. And so he couldn't keep up with the, there was, you're talking about no information rule.
Yeah.
We used to do those things all the time. Or he did. I mean, he was very creative and he was serious about it. But yeah, he put Forrest in jail.
I think we got to end it on that. Steve, I know you got a busy morning. I greatly appreciate you taking out the time to talk a little bit about Ray Scott, put things in perspective, and also set up the interview with Mr. Bobby Murray. So indebted, awesome. I'd also like to say before I let you go, all this information, I'm rattling off stats, looking at all this stuff and putting it into perspective. Almost all this stuff I'm getting is off of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame website. It's just bassfishinghof.com. You can learn more about Steve there. You can learn about Bobby. There's a great Ray Scott thing there. All this exists because of behind-the-scenes work of you, your wife, the Bass Fishing board of directors, those from the early 2000s who have started it.
You're part of. And
yeah, I'm just saying, we take all this stuff for granted, but places like the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame is where it lives, where you can type in 5 things and read about Ray Scott and keep this alive. So, I know, actually, I believe the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame auction winner is coming into town next week. I have to get a hold of him for bowling and bass fishing with me that we do every year. But anytime you see fundraisers or auctions or anything for the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, it goes to stuff like this to be able to keep these legacies alive. So I know you're a big part of that, inducted in 2020, but would have been remiss if I did not mention the importance of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame and this whole thing, especially with Ray Scott, the history of bass, Bobby Murray, yourself, and this entire show. So thank you, Steve.
Well, I appreciate that. And the Hall of Fame appreciates you. And it's it's a big deal that we don't forget these legacies. And the only reason I do it, I mean, there's not any, I want people to remember some of the incredible people that raised me. So
good stuff. All right. I know you, what do you have? Something done on the house? You had someone that's supposed to be there.
I'm installing a home generator, and then I got a little contractor coming by. My wife wants a new bathroom and whatever. So.
Sounds like a busy day, Steve. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Be on the lookout. Bassmaster.com, already a bunch of great stuff up there. And more stuff coming in the following weeks and at the upcoming Elite Series stop on Lake Fork.
All right, buddy. Good to see you.
See you, Steve. That was Steve Bowman from Bassmaster. We're going to take our final break of the day. When we come back, wrap things up, look ahead to the rest of the week. It is BTL on a Monday. We'll be back after this.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com.
Welcome back. Wrapping things up here on a Monday at BTL. It's just hard to overstate the importance of Ray Scott. I would venture to say without Ray Scott and what he did, you would not have multi-directional graphite and Royal titanium guides or rods or anything. As I said, it's impossible to see what would have happened had it not been Ray Scott, what direction it would have gone, and if it would have been in a direction, or any of us in the industry would have had a job without him. But I got a little bit inspired this week, and I had some shows that I've wanted to do. I haven't put them on the back burner, just haven't gotten to them. It's crazy because you do like tournament coverage, and we do the day for with Frank, and then other stuff comes up, and I'm like, yeah, we'll get there. But I was like, we're getting these shows knocked out because they're shows I wanted to do, shows that the viewer stuff have listened to. So tomorrow, Matt Becker is going to come on BTL. Now, Matt Becker, I know a couple things about Matt Becker. I know he's incredibly consistent, probably one of the most underrated guys on the pro circuit. I know he's got a crazy red, white, and blue wrap. I also know that he hates the Carolina rig, and he loves a spinning rod. So I already like the guy. I met him at the Bassmaster Classic this past year and was like, dude, I need to get you on BTL. I want to talk about the spinning rod, why you don't like the Carolina rig, and kind of do an overview about the versatility of a spinning rod, catching big bass on it, making top 10 cuts, and doing that. So we got Matt Becker on tomorrow. Excited to have him on off a really solid event there at Gunnersville. He's had a really, really good last couple of years. And then Wednesday, this is the one I've been waiting for. I'd be interested to see how many listeners are into this, and I really don't care. Matt Steffen is coming back on. I had Matt Steffen on before. We got to tell him, get his Bigfoot story too, because we didn't even get to that last time he was on. So Matt Steffen is on the show. And when he was on last time, he talked about how he had really upped his game since seeing his meditation coach. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, I haven't seen her for a couple of years, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, his posted something online about it. His meditation coach from the past, from when he was trying to get his mind right to fish, that he said worked, saw the clip, heard it, contacted him, even though he hadn't been there for a year or two. So that's awesome. I said, Matt, on the show, can I get her on the show? Got the contact. So meditation coach Katie Gruber, I wish I knew which one it was. Probably should have done that before. Is going to be on to talk about getting your mind right the importance, meditating. So she's not like a psychologist, I don't think. She's more like the natural, like yoga, meditation, stuff like that. I have no idea what direction the show's going to go in. I just know I'm excited about it because I need it. And I think a lot of other people need it. Everyone knows the guy who melts down on the water. So we're going to get our mind right. We're going to talk about what's going on with Matt Steffen and then talk with meditation coach Katie Gerber. And then day 4 with Frank Scalish. So a very exciting week of BTL shows coming up. Big shout out to Bobby Murray, winner of the first Bassmaster Classic on Lake Mead. Also the Bassmaster Classic in 79, I think. Maybe 78, 79 there on Ross Barnett Reservoir. And then also Steve Bowman for bringing the goods and telling some really cool stories about the man, Ray Scott. I'm sure there will be a lot more stories also told in the coming days during the Bassmaster Live coverage on Lake Fork. 100 pounds, glide baits, swim baits, topwaters. What's going to go down on Lake Fork? We can see Keith Combs catch a 50-pound bag on a chartreuse powder blueback plug. All those things are possibilities, but this has been BTL on a Monday. We'll talk to everyone tomorrow.